All right. So while everybody is getting ready to look good on camera, let's very quickly get started. I have our esteemed guest speaker today, Durga Prasanna. I'm sure Durga needs no introduction. I'm sure, very sure of that. But nonetheless, I would say Aster India, the biggest daddy in HR is how I would like to call all the senior guys big mummies and daddies. So Durga is one of the biggest HR daddies in Aster India, right? And thank you so much for taking our time today, Durga. It's such a pleasure to have you with us. Very quickly, I would like to share a few details about you. Durga has been comes with 16 plus years of hands-on HR experience in the healthcare industry. Played various strategic roles in terms of planning, policy formulation, leadership, as well as talent management. Very strong experience when it comes to handling operational responsibilities in HR, in talent acquisition, planning, budgeting, compensation, performance, relationships, and of course, leading and managing teams. So that's the kind of the broad spectrum of experience that Durga brings in, and I'm sure there are lots and lots of nuggets of knowledge and wisdom that Durga will be able to share with us. The topic that he's going to talk about is reverse mentoring, which is a very interesting topic. I'm sure you all, as of now, you're through Capstone, you're all experiencing mentoring, but this is a very different concept that Durga is going to talk about, which is how do you do reverse mentoring and not just direct mentoring as that you're experiencing. So without giving too many insights into that, I will hand it over to Durga, and Durga will then talk about his experience when it comes to mentoring and reverse mentoring. So over to you, Durga.
So thanks, Amita. Thank you for the nice and the kind words. It was a
My
long
pleasure.
introduction. But many of these insights I probably didn't realize about myself. You brought it out. But nonetheless, happy to see so many folks connected early morning for the sake of learning. So yes, no, when the AHA team reached out to me to pick up a topic that would relate with the interest and probably the current learnings of this cohort, so it kept me thinking. I said, okay, Amita, let me just spend a while to understand what the team needs. So while terminologies like team building, interpersonal relations, conflict management, and mentoring, these are all topics you would have been familiar when engrossed at some point or the other in your career. You would have been very familiar and come across such knowledge series in different forms, through experiences, through reflective learnings, through structured sessions and classrooms. This is something I found relevant in current times, largely because of the disruptions that's happening in business and the marketplace. So more so during the last couple of years post COVID, the technology was always there, but I think the need to adapt or embrace technology has been really fearsome this current times. So this is that's the need why we brought in this topic. In current times, things are really changing. If you look at the industry outside, even our industry, we see a lot of millennials coming in, bringing a lot, bringing a lot of values to the table, bringing a lot of insights in terms of what's happening in the current world. So we live in current times where everything is getting digitized. So it's not no longer a choice. Technology is no, you we can't live without technology. You can't live in isolation. It has to be embracing technology going forward. So in such current times, how do we learn from the millennials and the age group, even Gen Z coming to the workplace? Yeah. So we have the Gen Z also coming into the workplace who with a lot of exposure in terms of their technology adoption. So I chose this topic largely because reverse mentoring I think is very important in current times, because I believe all of you in some form the lead teams in supervisory capacities, or you are aspiring managers who will be leading teams in a short while. So that's been my premise, and I understand that it's very important to understand and acknowledge the contribution and the value the youngsters bring into the team, and how do we kind of leverage the best in current times. So that's the context. And Amita, is somebody going to help me with the slides here? I had shared the deck with you. So thank you, Amita. So that's been the context. Let's move forward. So I'm sure all of you are familiar with some of this terminologies going forward. If you could just move on to the next slide, please. So yeah, I think no, all of you are familiar with mentoring and coaching. I'm sure reverse mentoring is something we will talk about it elaborately as we move forward in the session. So coming to mentoring and coaching, yes, many a times these terminologies are interchangeably used, but specifically since all of us would be managers or managers in the making, mentoring I would say is a more informal process. It's ongoing and continuous as compared to coaching. Coaching normally is a very structured approach where the coach drives the entire association with the coachee. It's got a specified timeline with very defined outcomes. So if you have to segregate and you have to talk the real differences between the two, I would say coaching is far more formal. It has got definite outcomes, it's got time bound, and it's led by the coach. Compared and contrary to mentoring, mentoring is no, an ongoing process, normally not defined by timelines, and it is more driven by the mentee. Unlike coaching, where the coach sets targets, he sets a structured framework, mentoring is an association that's long term and ongoing. Now, coming to reverse mentoring, it basically is a association where somebody who is less experienced, somebody who is I would say lesser in age compared to the mentor, they drive and they play the role of the mentor, who brings in certain unique skills, certain unique experiences, and certain areas which they are good at. And here it's just the opposite. So somebody senior, more experienced, more more in-depth experience and more insights in the industry takes up the role of a mentee, and somebody less experienced but with more capabilities and more insights into that particular area or domain takes the role of a mentor. So that's about reverse mentoring. So I hope this is clear. Any questions this point in time? I would just like to take a pause and hear, if it makes sense, or if you have something, we could take it at the end. Over to you guys.
Any reverse mentoring examples that you can think from your life now that Durga has shared this? Where do you think you would have we've learned from our from people who are younger to us? Yes, you can unmute and speak up.
Isn't it an ongoing process, as in, so whenever we have your team members, you would naturally learn back from them, right? I mean, we start off any particular session, giving some gyan, some theory, and then when the discussion goes on, they give us examples, they give us what difficulties they face with what we have suggested, or, how to improve on it. Isn't that an ongoing process?
It is. It is. It is. Reverse mentoring is also an ongoing process. But problem is the context, the whole context of bringing it into light and discussing in a structured platform is how do we make it more formal? How do we have a plan around it as we move forward? How do you have a structured process at an institutional level? How do you put reverse mentoring, and what are some of the advantages it brings to the individual? What are some of the advantages it brings to the organization as a whole? As we go forward, we will look into some of this. The millennials feel engaged, they feel valued. It breaks silos. It breaks a lot of preconceived biases of the millennials who have about the senior management. So it's just about how do we structure it, how do we put a plan in place, how do we measure the outcomes, how do we relate and translate some of the benefits across units, across organizations, across how do we make it more porous and benefits flow across in the organization. That's the whole thing. But yes, as Amita said, reverse mentoring, we see it, probably I would say the simplest of examples when we ask somebody, maybe some of our kids at home, to help us, book an app, food, to book probably food, help us book with the tickets. Now, platforms like e-commerce platforms, I'm sure all of us take help from, our siblings, our younger ones at home in help us booking a food delivery, helping us order something to Amazon or a Flipkart, helping us book some tickets, navigate through the apps. When we buy a phone, when we switch our phones, we ask somebody younger to us, how do I tap, how do we navigate through different apps? There's all probably examples of reverse mentoring happening in a very informal way. So that's ongoing, that's continuous, and this is more relatable to an organizational note.
Right. My question to you also was regarding the same thing, that when we learn from our kids, especially when it comes to technology, that we are constantly learning from our kids, and even small experiences, few things, the way we look at things vis-a-vis the way kids look at things is very different, right? And sometimes we do take some lessons from the way they are or the way they do things. So That's a good example. Thank you so much.
Yes, so absolutely. But nevertheless, the objective, the approaches are different of mentoring, coaching, reverse mentoring. But the objectives and the outcomes are all, universal. That it's relation based. We are looking for more effective development. We are, looking at a goal based approach. It's interactive and it's got to be productive. Both, it's a symbiotic association. I would mention, where both the mentor and the mentee, or the coach and the coachee, they have benefits, both benefit at the end of this association of this continuous relationship. Let's move on, Amita, to the next one. So basically, this is a content. I don't want to keep it too, content heavy. So we would like to be more interactive. Would like to hear from your experiences. So we will probably keep, at least 15 minutes aside so that we have adequate time for interaction. So basically, we will be talking in an organizational note, as I mentioned. What is we've already spoken about reverse mentoring and how it can change the company in if implemented in a structured manner. At reverse mentoring versus traditional mentoring, what are some of the differences, approaches, objectives, outcomes, the process as such, and the basic action plan? And what are the tools? How do you make it successful? In your own teams, in your own departments at the organizational level. So the talent profile form, which is very, very important when you kickstart this process. What are some of the guidelines for the mentors? What works, what doesn't work, what to keep in mind, how to make the whole association successful. Who are the sponsors who will drive this? How does it make it institutional success at the end of it? And best practices and test cases of reverse mentoring that has yielded super results in different companies, some industry results that have been proved test cases. We'll just have a glance at it. Next one, Amita. So this is what I was talking of in the beginning. So it helps to engage, retain, and promote young talent. This has been our experience. No? I'm sure all of you have seen people coming in. When you hire people, this is the next generation of talent that's coming in. And the definition of talent is altogether different. When I say definition of talent, their aspirations. If you are today, no longer we get questions from youngsters coming and asking, "What's my CTC? What's my salary?" Their questions, much beyond that. What flexibility does the organization provide? Do I get a 5 working day? What's your policy on paternity and maternity leave? So what's my career progression in this organization? Do I get a chance to speak to leadership? So these are some of the questions that speaks of the mindsets and the aspirations of the younger generations that's coming into the workforce today. So this association of reverse mentoring basically connects the young folks, the aspiring, I would say the aspiring workforce that joins the organization new, to connect with some of the seasoned supervisors, the senior folks in the organization. And as I mentioned, it's a symbiotic association, basically helped at promoting the younger talent. And in the process, the veterans, the seasoned folks who are in their organization, they gain largely on technology front. So it empowers, as you see, some of the outcomes of reverse mentoring. It helps, emerging and established leaders. It empowers them, and it opens up a dialogue with the younger force, the generation that's coming into the organization. It closes the knowledge gap between long-time employees and newer hires, because this is something that's continuously evolving. So the approaches, change significantly. The objective remaining change. So I happened to be in a seminar recently, and then we were talking about digitization, HR transformation, bots. So definitely, the takeaway at the end of the session was machines or bots, they will not replace HR, but there will HR who do not use machines and bots are likely to be replaced by the ones who do. That everybody agreed to. So there's no choice. We can't live without, in isolation. Technology and human capital, technology and talent has to go hand in hand. And when I mentioned talent, I think technology today covers anything to everything. The way we have, welcome patients, the way reception happens, the way registration happens, the way appointment is booked. We are talking of, no, I know about the telehealth vertical. We are talking about apps. We are designing programs. We have tele-ICU. We have remote monitoring. You could have a physician examining a patient, remotely. Your vitals captured, remotely. You have, physician care. You have, post-care continuum. Talk of any field. Talk of radiology. Talk of imaging. Talk of diagnostics. Talk of sampling. So today, technology has embraced every aspect of our life. Clinical, non-clinical, administrative, and things like that. So the other one, the big advantage is reverse mentoring. It swings big organizations, and normally it tends to make the organization flatter, not by structure in terms of reach. Otherwise, conventionally organizations that are very centralized, you find it very difficult to have a reach to the top. Somebody who joins the organization has no access to connect with leadership. So reverse mentoring is one such ways when you can actually partner a mentor and mentee to an association in which they engage with some of the senior leaders in the organization, and there is of course a knowledge transfer in the process. They get connected, they get a feel, they get a hang of how leaders think, how they behave, and this is one of the aspirations we see of the younger folks who are joining the workforce today. And of course it engages younger and newer employees, promoting loyalty and generating trust. So definitely, as I said, the aspirations are no longer no restricted to financial perks. Today young talent is looking at recognition, they are looking at growth, they are looking at engagement. So this association promotes as an organization level loyalty, trust, and this connect probably binds deeply the employer and the employee, which helps in probably rewarding some of the benefits of the relational association with the new hires. Next, Amita. So how does it change the company? So yes, we spoke about it just in the beginning. Key, the modes of reverse mentoring. It can be very formal. Starts at home. We seek help of team members in preparing a deck. We help seek team members to help us connect to a laptop when somebody when we're off network. We ask somebody who is off. No, probably tech oriented. We ask them to just fix up the issue. So these are some of the real time things we see in terms of probably not structured, but yes, examples of real-time reverse mentoring happening right in our departments. So increasing millennial retention. So I think all of us will agree that we have more and more millennials coming into the workforce whose aspirations are different. We just spoke about it. So they look for flexible environments. They look at continuously learning, a journey. They look at upskilling themselves. So they definitely find this association of career advancement and personal fulfillment, and that's one of the connects of having reverse mentoring, where millennials feel valued for the association. They gain unparalleled access to the senior leaders of the organization and the benefit. And when I probably talk of some of the outcomes, that's test cases in the industry. Actually, these millennials have changed tracks. Somebody who aspired to be in quality has ended up doing too good in operations. Somebody who aspired to be a finance professional, after the exposure to leadership, has ended up being a business professional. And likewise, there are a lot of examples. So career progression is not restricted to a one-way ladder, climb the ladder. It is a free market. It's an open space. Largely happens in tech companies today. Tech companies, it's all about open markets. You have career maps, you have career pathways, you have different ways of growing in the career. So growth is not restricted to the same domain and vertical. People change tracks. People upskill. People embrace technologies that's happening, hot skills, and definitely they end up much I would say in a different space, in a different I would say in a different vertical altogether than what they initially aspired. So improving diversity and inclusion, yes, reverse mentoring. I think this is something all of you be aware that organizations today are progressively making efforts in terms of improving their diversity quotient, equity quotient, inclusion quotient. Today, potentially any investors who come and engage with the company look at some of these metrics, how diverse you are, what kind of representation you have in terms of ethnicity, in terms of gender, in terms of nationality, and a lot of other parameters. Earlier, it used to be just males and females. We used to have men and the women count in the workforce, but today it's not restricted to that. So it definitely helps in bridge the gap in terms of bringing people, millennials, and bridging the gap in terms of improving the connect. And by pairing leaders who come from different diversity backgrounds, diversity exposures, and it brings about a lot of perspectives when you engage, in reverse mentoring with the younger folks in terms of removing the unconscious biases, some of the perceived notions which we have either ways. We certainly have some of the senior folks. We everybody has biases. It could be stereotypic views. We have millennials who have biases about leaders. So definitely it helps erase some of these biases and helps increase productivity and connect across the organization. And the third one, I think, is a no-brainer. It helps us stay abreast of technological advancements. I think technology has disrupted and will continue to disrupt. Statistics say that half life of jobs and skills is becoming shorter and shorter, meaning any skill, any technology, or any proficiency that acquired today is going to get redundant in the days to come, years to come, and the time span or the time lag for this shrinkage is going to reduce even further and further. So something that was probably valid for 5 years, and 5 years down the line, you would see that something that's learned today would probably disappear and become redundant in 2 to 3 years time span. More relevant for technological companies that are working on a lot of domains, a lot of platforms, but nevertheless, I would say healthcare also is being embraced by technology. Today, we hear a lot of aspects. I mentioned about it, artificial intelligence coming in. We have a lot of advancements in science, technology, and advancements happening in the field of medicine also. So these are some of the key takeaways at a company level, how reverse mentoring can make a holistic change and change the way the ecosystem of the healthcare works. Next one, Amita.
Great, great. Just to add on, I think it also breaks the barrier that knowledge and wisdom is only one way. It only flows from the top, right? So therefore, it breaks that barrier and say it can flow from bottom up also. And then there's so much that we can learn from the younger generation, the millennials who are coming in. And when we do that, it breaks the cultural, the multi-generational gap that we have built. That also it kind of blurs those boundaries.
Yes, absolutely well said. So since I mentioned in the beginning, some of you would be adding teams and all. Probably it's just about finding out, who is good at what. You do a probably quick profiling of your team members. There could be somebody who's very good at social media connect. For example, I have a team member identified. I tell him always, I want to update my LinkedIn. I want to post this. Would you help me? How can I do a self branding better? So you need to do a profiling of people in your own teams and then find out the strength areas. They may be, as Amita pointed out, they may be relatively younger to you, lesser by experience, but everybody brings about those unique skills in terms of exposure, in terms of their passion, in terms of their likelihood to connect with technology is always going to be far more superior compared to Gen X, Gen Y, and then somebody probably baby boomers. I'm sure all of us can relate to that. It brings a lot of value. In fact, in the technology seminar, they were talking about, Wipro was talking about it yesterday. I happened to be in one of the conferences. They find this upskilling relatively very, very difficult among the Gen X workers. So people who are in the age group of 40, 42 to 50, 55, the rate of change or the rate of technological progression is far more difficult against millennials. Somebody who's in the age group of probably 20, 20 to 25 is far relatively easy to scale them up against this cohort of people who are relatively senior by age.
Right, completely agree. I'll
So I will skip the slide. We have spoken about this is little I know text heavy, so I don't want to really take it on. So this is just talks about traditional mentoring and reverse mentoring. I think we have spoken about it. So let's move on. So this is basically the process. I think all of us as leaders and managers need to know if you want to structure a reverse mentoring process in an organization. How do you really do it? So always begin with the end in mind. This is very, very important. You start with the end in mind, defining your core objectives. Why do you want to set up a process? What is that A, B, C, D, E you want to achieve out of this program? And if this program was not to be there, what are the likely consequences? So these are some of the questions I know you need to ask yourselves as a manager, as a leader, as a supervisor. If I want to set a process, so execute the program, write down your the program outline, what you want to achieve at the end of it, and select the participants. The mentee selection is very, very important. Who are the participants you would like to benefit? Of course, here, since the process is reverse, your mentor in two sense becomes the mentee here. So who are the people, and what kind of exposure you would like to give them? Which areas of the current professional interest, what relates to them, what is the need of the hour, does it correlate with the position in hand, does it correlate with the job he's currently doing? So still that is very, very critical to ensure that this program is very successful. Develop the mentor requirements. So these once you decide them, what are the key objectives, what is those areas, what are those technology areas you want to scale them up. It's right, it's the next question is to develop the right mentors. Who are those people who can help you? Who are those mentors who possess those specific skills, or those who have that technological orientation, those who have a know-how? who are those subject matter experts who can give more visibility and traction to the whole association. So develop the list of mentees after that, and select mentors. The process goes hand in hand. So match mentors and mentees. That's very, very important. So if you want to make it a paired association, this has the match is very, very important. And there are a lot of factors we will talk about it going forward. What works? Probably the diversity, the interest levels, the passions, the passion and the interest levels, some of the industries, the exposure, the bias, no conscious, unconscious bias you evaluate. So this is very, very important. The association, if it has to work, the match has to be really apt. So and finalize the teams thereafter. The program has to be rolled off post that. Once you start executing the program, of course there has to be start date, there has to be check-ins, you need to measure the progress. So kick off the event to launch sessions, and very, very important that this has the buy-in of the top management. Otherwise you need a sponsor for such associations to work. Otherwise you'll never have such structured interventions working in the workplace. You need to document at regular intervals the key learnings and the target closer. So you have to measure the gap. Where did you start? What progress has been made? Could you relatively, could you relate it to tangible terms? Is the measurable progress in accordance with some of the smart objectives you have set? Record the achievements, and you need to have a definite timeline for closure. If this is a start date, if it's a 100-day plan, how do I achieve it? How do I structure it? How do I measure the progress? How do I measure the gap and the delta? And what is the progressive action plan? Basis the entire timeline. You decide for the course of this association. So very, very, I would think key call outs in this whole structured program is the selection of the mentor mentee, the timelines, the association, the outcomes, and sponsorship friends. This is very, very important. You need to have the business head, the CEO, somebody really who makes an impact and influence the organization, come and kickstart this, flag off this whole association for people to take it seriously, and for this association to make sense.
Durga, I have a question. So, what you've laid out is a very formal, structured process, right? And when I see it, it's probably something that is driven by HR or by the learning function. So, a very formalized process. My question to you is: can it be done in a very informal, impromptu kind of a setup? Also, it can be done.
Yes, yes, yes. So that's why I said, since they're all managers, I assume that some of them would be definitely having, reportees, team working to them. This can definitely work. I mean, you need to have it. So I mean, the idea of, sending this, I'm just trying to, probably equip you all with a broader framework, how this works,
Mm.
So probably you have 6 members of the team and you want 3 of them to pair with, another 3 younger folks who are new to the system, who bring in that, expertise into the team. What are some of the factors to keep in mind? Why do you pair A with C and B with D and not A with B? Okay, so this can be very informal, as Amita says. You really, this is actually a very structured, formalized process, which is institutional, driven either by the L&D function or HR as the owners, of this process. But definitely, you can do it, in your own departments. So we will just get into it. What are the tools? How do you structure it? So what prompts you, or what are some of the parameters when you look at A pairing with D and B pairing with C, and not vice versa? So we'll talk about that, but then definitely you could have it a time bound, a plan. You could have check in the progress. This can be done absolutely informally at the department level.
Sure, sure. Interesting. Thanks, Prasanna.
So this is probably a little more subjective of what we were just speaking up. I think we've spoken most about it. So how do you measure progress? Very important to make a note. So means progress is it's a means for evaluating the program, uh, defining how close you are to the planned outcomes. It could be in the form of a questionnaire. You could design a questionnaire. The mentor could actually help you in that, and you could have focus group discussions. You could have individual observations. You could have individual interviews with the mentees. So these are some of the ways and means to find out if the association is really working, or there needs to be an probably interjection from the manager, or you need some structured interventions to see if it's not going right. How do you change the process, or how do you bring in something that's making a difference to the whole? So follow up, I said it's very, very important to have checks and balances in place. At what periodic intervals would you follow up, and what is the opportunity to learn and stretch, both in terms of the mentor and mentee to learn and personally and professionally. So plan the lunch. I was talking about it. So orientation meeting with all the sponsors, and of course, if it's informal happening at the own departmental level, it could be with the manager or the supervisor of that particular departments. So it has to be well in advance planned and the plan rolled out and communicated. So the pairing, the second last you see on the screen, that's very important. So consider personal chemistry. Often, what we think, prima facie, the best matches are often found to be mismatches, where ego sets in, where people feel that I'm senior, I am a seasoned campaigner in the industry. What have I got to learn? Why should I learn? So in fact, so when you do the pairing, you have to keep these personas in mind. What kind of personalities they are? What would make sense? Or, who would be able to tackle such personalities? Would the association make sense and sustainable over the period of 3 to 6 months? So consider, personal characteristics is very, very important, when you pair up this association. And defining goal, I think, we spoke about it. So, positive work relationships, definitely the idea is to foster a positive work relationship, break preconceived notions which mentees have or mentors have, and vice versa. It could be breaking preconceived notions and biases. So define the intervention of the senior leadership team. Probably that helps when you have a business head, a CEO, a vertical head coming in, taking interest in the association, asking both the mentor and mentee if it's making sense. So basically, it's a pulse check at different routine intervals to just find out if the association is making sense, so that there's a little bit of seriousness and formal this thing going in into the whole association. Next. So tools, basically, what's the start point if you want to do it at your own departments, So I think talent profile, that's very, very important. So I've seen different companies use different talent profiles when they do this reverse mentoring. This is usually called success profile. I've seen companies calling it by different names, but essentially it captures some of the position details, the incumbent details in terms of the exposure, in terms of experience, in terms of the diversity, kind of teams you have handled, the some of the roles you have handled, kind of exposures you have, and things like that. So their talent profile is very, very important. So to bring it up right at the outset, this helps you mentor the do the pairing, and it do include a lot of other stuff apart from the professional details in this form, in terms of hobbies, personal backgrounds, interest levels, passion, pastime, experiences of the past, present, what keeps them engrossed. So these are some of the things that will help you, when you actually pair people. That's very normal, interest levels of when you design and roll out a talent profile or a success profile. So session schedule, yes, you need to have a well plan in advance. It can't be in a rush. It can't be very informal also. So please have this schedules ready. Keep participants accountable for the project's orderly conduct and completion. They should be partners in progress, very much pairing up with the mentors. So SharePoint site, this is again depends on organization to organization. How does knowledge transfer happen within the organization, how you want to record and store this data and interactions in the organization. Basically, this is the repository of information may vary from organization to organization. And guidelines, establish the responsibility for the project. So pinpointed responsibilities is very, very important. What are the responsibilities and accountabilities of the mentor, the mentee, and so what are some of the tips on content and advice on professional behavior? You want to really, as custodians of this entire association, keep it on track, ensure that it doesn't go unprofessional. And the mentor sometimes who's senior, the mentee here is of course senior by age, by experience, and he's longer presumably, presumably so in the organization. He should not found this association offending to him any point in time. What are some of the checks, balances, and some of the behaviors and decorum and conduct you defined in the association of this whole process? That's very important to define.
Correct. And that's where I think a big aspect of this is confidentiality, especially when you're pairing the young with the senior. And in the mentoring discussion, if they were to reveal, because there are a lot of personal things also, even if you don't want to, there could be professional or person that comes out, that confidentiality needs to be maintained, right? That ethics needs to be maintained, that this information is not to be disclosed outside or shared with others, isn't it? That's an
Absolutely.
important aspect.
Yes. And they're seniors. It could sometimes happen that no, he heads the teams. I mean, sometimes may not be directly the immediate reporting manager, but it could be a level no level 1 or a level 2 down. So confidentiality of information is very very important. And yes, the spirit of participation both of the mentor and the mentee is very very essential if it is to meet the desired objectives. That's a absolutely yes, Savita. So we move on. So this is a brief talent profile form I picked up. One of the companies they have done it. So you should include the job title, how long he's been in the job, and what are some of the developmental goals, identified for this resource based on the appraisals, the training need analysis. You can all capture it from the learning repository in the organization. What are some of the core competencies? I would say professional competencies, technical competencies, behavioral competencies of the resource. What are the I was mentioning about the organizations, his work for the industry exposure the person brings in, the resource brings in. What's the educational background? Very very important to know. School, is he being a good scholar? The kind of whether distinction areas of distinction during the academic exposure. What's the birthplace, hobbies, personal interest. You could also bring in little bit about family details, provided the mentee is willing to share personal details to the extent he or she is comfortable with. This could all be very very valid during the course of pairing to take this to make it fruitful. Yeah, so this is again, little text heavy. So I would try to keep it very concise. What are some of the guidelines for the mentor, and what are some of the do's and don'ts? What should you do during the session and pre-session before you actually take it up, and after the session. In the So basically, information sharing, as much as information the mentor could elicit during the whole association is good. So it has to be very probing questions at the same time, not making it derogatory or offensive to the mentor. So it's all about learning, and the association holds good in the premise that both learn from each other. It's a symbiotic association, unlike typical mentoring where the mentor is, more senior. He is more experienced. He brings a lot of value in terms of exposure, in terms of expertise. Is SME. Here, it's more than both have to learn from each other because he's senior, he's experienced, he's got industry exposure. So it's all about rapport building, the communication. So basically, during the session, the mentor asks some generic questions to gauge familiarity with the internet. It could be simple questions to start off, like how often do you hit social media in terms of posts? Are you on LinkedIn? Do you regularly post in Facebook? How often do you shop online? Do you do your banking? Do you meet your banking needs online? Simple questions on YouTube. Do you read blogs? What is the level of connect with do you read probably a print media newspaper? Do you read online newspaper and things like that? So this is very important. So determine the familiarity and interest level of mentee on it could be technologies, it could be devices, it could be networking communications, so probably the level of extent to which they explore search engines, and their participation in multimedia and things like that. So in terms of preparatory activities, well, in advance, it's very important the mentor understands the background of the mentee. So you could explore forums like Google, LinkedIn, we do a little bit of research on the line of business they are in, and of course you have a talent profile. You could understand and study it better and probably deep dive and delve into some of the questions during the course of interaction that feeds from the talent profile. You could ask a little bit about if you find the interest levels in, let's say, coaching. You find that interest levels in captaining a school team. There could be people who were heading uh, probably people who were enrolled in NCC. They were school captains. They've been in very active, campaigner during college days. They have, headed political parties and things like that. So this really helps. And after the session, very important that the recordings or the summary of these findings is uh, and recorded on the discussion board. And there is a formal email follow up to the mentee, and the actionables are properly recorded, and topics and suggestions for the next session are agreed upon, and there's a timeline to when to reconnect to track the progress. So after the session, these are all musts. It has to be formalized, it has to be documented, more importantly communicated and agreed between the mentor and mentee to make it a very fruitful association going forward. So reasons for success. So some of the guidelines again, if you want to do it in a smaller team within you, some of you are asking like, how do I drive it within my team? So executive, what could be possible? Success, executive support. As I said, such associations work best when you have senior management support. You have a sponsor to this. The business head goes and talks about it. The head of the organization speaks about it in common forums, in town halls. So it's a cultural change. It's a mindset change, and it's best accepted when you have commitment and involvement from the top management. And if you're doing it at smaller departments, you could probably ask the vertical head, the function head could pitch in as a sponsor and speak for it. That is much likely to have a positive influence on the whole association. Commitment, yes. It's only going to meet the light of the day if you have commitment both from the mentor and mentee. If you see it successful at both ends, then this is going to work. And of course, I said, where do you record it? How do you record it? Your institutional memory, what are the different tools, or what are the different kind of learning platforms you use in the organization? Of course, we spoke about confidentiality, that being the prime anchor of this whole association. And leaderboard, you could have this, have to make it competitive. Of course, this has been designed keeping in view its institutional rollout. So which team is currently ahead, which team is currently leading, probably buck the team that's lagging. You could make it little competitive. Of course, you have to make it little interesting. You have to make this association reward the teams that's following some of the basics right, where you have more points scored in. You could have some design criterias. How do you kind of reward the teams, bring them into the forefront vis-a-vis teams that's lagging, and how do you really make it competitive and bring that sporting spirit in this whole association across the organization? And remaining flexible is very, very important. Stay open to change and feedback. This applies both for mentor and mentee, and use these feedbacks as springboards to probably develop, help, and make it more successful. So feedback should not be derogatory, should not be offensive, both for mentor and mentee. And somebody who's anchoring this should take feedback as a positive construct to help and take it forward. So best practices, I will go a little fast in the interest of time. We have to define expectations. I think we've spoken about it. Agree on the rules, and rules are meant to be followed. They're not meant to be counted. Applies both for mentor and mentee. Mutual trust is very, very important. Amina spoke about confidentiality. So the trust is going to definitely be one of the most important pillars if you have to have this working out, and willingness to learn. So I think as an organization, if you're going to really, prophesize that learning is the way forward, and why people need to learn, upskill, stay ahead of the curve. As I mentioned, if we don't stay ahead of the curve, change is going to engulf us. If that's been the premise of this learning, I think then it makes the whole association very, very fruitful. So that why start with the end in mind, and if that end is conveyed to all the learners, all the subscribers in this association, it's going to definitely see the light of the day. So success stories. These are some of the success stories that companies who have really implemented reverse mentoring at an institutional level and have seen things taking a move. Companies like Target, where they started developing empathetic perspective of employees, with senior leaders. After interaction, they started understanding what goes through people, the rank and file, and people who are at the bottom of the pyramid. Cisco has done it really well. They have a very structured program on reverse mentoring, in which they started reducing unconscious biases at both levels. Biases which leaders have about the young talent, and biases no, the millennials had about the senior workforce and the leaders in the organization. And United Healthcare, they expose millennials to alternate career pathways. I was talking about it in the beginning, where you start with something in mind, and then because of the exposure, because of the insights, because of the interaction with the leadership, you gain visibility and you decide to change tracks, and you really grow fast in the organization. Procter and Gamble, senior leaders and employees with disabilities, they were connected to give them absolutely, different perspective of what goes through some of the people who are, undergoing challenges. It helped them understand their perspectives as well, so that some of the interventions they designed in the organization, particularly keeping this cohort in mind, was truly addressed. Uh, Pershing, that's a company that could retain about 96% retention of around. They did this exercise with 77 millennials involved, and they were almost able to retain the entire cohort with a structured reverse mentoring process. Fidelity, I am sure all of you know this company. They improved their diversity and inclusion quotient through a very structured approach of reverse mentoring. And Airtel did it very interestingly. So when they hired the younger folks, they really wanted to understand from them what would they like to have in terms of services, what would like to see some of the features. And they got a lot of insights when they connected with some of the younger folks who had joined the organization, basically the millennials, to try and understand their expectations as a customer base. So this helped them to tap the youth market base, understanding perspectives and insights when they connected with their own employees who are very young, who had just joined the workforce, gave them a lot of insights, help them to move forward in terms of tapping the market base. So these are some, test cases right in front of you, organizations who have implemented reverse mentoring and who have been very, very successful, and here we are. So I think that leaves us almost at the end. And I mean, Sabita, if you could move forward, I think that was the last slide, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. So drawbacks, I think, the second last slide, if you could just one slide. Yeah. So belief in younger mentors, this is again proven time and again through research. What could be the potential pitfalls in this whole project? What could go wrong? Belief in younger mentors. So the belief that yes, they are incapable or they may not be able to drive the desired agenda is something that could be, a potential pitfall why this project may not be successful. Open to feedbacks. We spoke about, resilience and things like that in the beginning. So if the leaders who are mentees in the whole association do not believe or they do not take feedback in its true spirit, then of course, this is not going to work. Confidence, we spoke about it. Confidentiality is very, very important. One of the anchors that's going to make it successful. It's either going to make it or break it. Unwilling to dedicate time. So this has to be planned well in advance. That is why we were talking why it needs to be structured so well, so that you do it, off hours. You don't, doesn't do it in peak time. So finding a time in the busy schedule, people usually excuse themselves telling that, I'm off, I'm traveling, I'm engaged. So commitments to business is something, that's seen one of the challenges why this doesn't meet its desired ends. And technology interface in the present role. So this, I don't need it. I'm in a transactional role. My role doesn't need any technology interface. I'm good, happily doing what I've been doing. So these are some of the reasons, unwillingness to learn and be progressive is to adapt technology, because we spoke about it. It can't be technology or you. It has to be technology and you. We have to move hand in hand going forward. So this could be some of the challenges why what could really hinder this progress of this whole association. And we've seen, if taken meticulously planned well, it has proved to be successful in many big organizations, and no reason why you can't be successful even if you try with your own teams with this information in hindsight. So that's all from me. It leaves us with about close to 7 8 minutes. We'll be happy to hear from you. Over to you, Amita.
Yes, thank you so much, Durga. That was such a comprehensive and interesting, session. I think we've learned so much from how the whole process and structure it is. I think I'm sure our emerging talent, our young leaders have also have found it very interesting, and I'm sure they have a lot of questions that they would like to ask. So over to you, team. Please ask questions. You're also, just to add on to this before I hand it over to them, they are currently going through a mentoring process. So we formed something called Mentor Net, and they are working on their individual in the group capstone projects. And we have, every group has been assigned 2 mentors from the erstwhile Band 4 leadership batch. And why reverse mentoring here we are talking about is, of course, they're getting mentored, but I'm sure there is an opportunity for the senior leaders also to learn from them. So therefore, that reverse mentoring really works. And for them to learn, one benefit of reverse mentoring is what I'm, visualizing is, when you work in close proximity with the senior leader, it really boosts your self-confidence. You see how they are working, right? You learn from them. right? It enhances. It's a great opportunity to learn from them. And then you also very closely, you get a close view of the various tenets of being an effective, great leader. And then you're able to embrace those skills. I think for me, that's the biggest learning from the whole mentoring experience, whether it's reverse or whether it's direct, isn't it? Yes, Dr. Prabha, you have a question. Please go ahead.
Hi. I have a question for individuals who are interested in becoming a reverse mentor. What step you think they should take to prepare themselves for this role? Because what I believe is after hearing out this session, the drive for building or formally structuring the mentor-mentee relationship would be mostly from the top to bottom. So do you foresee any foresee whether this can be reverse as well? Like if a reverse mentor would like to come up with the new idea of creating or formatting the relationship between mentor and mentor, is there any way out?
Okay. So
You
if you
mean
could
to say
just
in Aster? You mean to say in
No, in
Aster or in
general.
general?
In
Okay.
general.
if you could just simplify your question, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the thing is, first question is individual who are interested in becoming a reverse mentor, what step they should be taking in order to prepare themselves for this role. Second is, mostly I believe that the drive for building a relationship between a reverse mentor and a mentee would be from the decision would be from the top to bottom. So do you foresee that there will be time when the reverse mentor would come up and initiate the structuring of the whole relationship?
Yeah, so that's very interesting. That's a very good no, perspective. You are just bringing it out. So I think the entire learning is a journey, right? So I really can't claim that today I am well equipped. I could be a mentor. So I'm just keeping the term reverse mentoring little aside to keep things very simplified. So all of us will have definitely some point in time people younger to us in our own teams. We would have siblings at homes who are younger to us. You could have a next generation of kids we could be staying with. So it's in that case, your second part of the question comes into picture. Like, would there be a time when the senior folk in the organization would put his hands up and say, I am willing for the reverse mentorship. Would you, really drive it? It is very unlikely to happen, right? Unless the leader, it could be happening in a very informal note, as I mentioned. No, there could be somebody, your manager could be coming up to you and say, no, look, could you help me with my tech? I have a presentation tomorrow. No, I need you to add all the features. You're really good at that. Or there means somebody, you could be, he could be facing a little issue with his internet. He could be struggling to navigate through his new mobile phone. He could be struggling to probably install an app. Or he may be struggling with some of the e-transactions he's not very familiar with. So these are instances where you could possibly step up and help him, whatever, based on the desired request. But specifically coming, why this session? Specifically answering your second part of the question, we would all be working with colleagues who are junior to us, and absolutely it is a no-brainer that people who come with time, you will have people coming into the organization who bring more technological skills. Younger the generation, more likely that they will have more exposure to technology, more they would be tech savvy, they would be understanding apps, they would be understanding the learning, where we need to learn, upskill, and evolve, and pair up teams within your own small groups where people really have value add. And coming to the first part of the question, I said, it's an ongoing process. If you really want to be a mentor to somebody senior to you, as I said, if there's a specific agenda in place, if it's an institutional process, and there is a definite set agenda for learning, you are going to associate with the mentee for XYZ to achieve, it's recorded. Then, of course, definitely you need to have an expert. And that is why that pairing is very, very important. Then it is very important for the mentee who's senior to you by age, exposure, tenure in the organization to believe that you are the right mentor to drive it. And then if those agenda is a match, that's why I said the match and the mismatch is very, very important. And certainly some perceived matches turn out to be the biggest mismatches later. where we feel that this person could be the right fit for the so and so person, but there could be a mismatch in persona. There could be something derogatory. The mentee could find it offensive. So that's why I said the personality, the persona match, the interest levels, the background, this should all relate. But specifically, I think first part of the question, if something interests you, for example, it could be gaming, it could be coding, something, for example, in HR, nobody talks about analytics. We talk about very, very specifics like, regression, multivariates, prescriptive analysis, data-driven, decisions. So these are areas you could build on your strengths based on your interest levels, your past orientation, and your passion driving you forward. And you could always harp on those skills, going forward.
Thank you.
Sure. Did that answer your question? My answer was also quite long.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it gives some insight, but I think the formal structure, I
Has
mean,
to come from the organization.
yeah, with time, I think it should be there, and I think HR is going to play a major role in this.
Yes, at an institutional level, definitely HR, but I'm sure all of you are managers in the making, and I personally believe all of you are HR managers. You drive appraisals, you drive engagement, you drive conversations, you get involved in recruitment. So maybe formally HR is there, but all of us play the role of HR managers in our own individual capacity. And that was the take-home message. Could you drive it informally in your own departments with some tangible outcomes?
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's a very profound statement, Durga, to say that you're all HR managers. Even I never thought from that perspective, because they do a lot of the work that an HR professional does. So that's very interesting. Right. So do you think there are any opportunity in Aster to formalize this reverse mentoring?
So I
Are
think
we
again,
looking at this?
I'll go back to Aster Healthcare. So Madhvi, I'll
So the
turn up
ball
to
is
Madhvi
in
and
our
see.
court now.
Yes, yes, yes. No, it should happen. No, the way technology is making progress, and as I mentioned about the skills becoming redundant, half-life of skills, getting shorter and shorter.
Yes.
I think we'll have no choice, down the line. Today, a lot of areas we have new add-ons. We have any beach audits now happening, virtually. We have any beach audits, that's happening real time, where you capture data very, very differently. So I think, no, it's technology is not going to spare anybody. It can't be, either me and you. It's got to be you and me together. So definitely, some point in time, organizations are going to have it in a very structured form and rolled out.
That's a good input. Yes, Dr. Madhura.
No, it is true that we each of us will have to drive our own team members. But then, for example, now if I need a training for my members regarding, maybe it could be BLS, it could be something from the nursing side, infection control, whatever it is, I can just request, because there is already a system there. There is already a culture there where the team leaders of different departments, they coach, they cruise coach. But if we reverse mentoring for that, I could ask my team member, to coach me. But I doubt if I'll be able to ask another, department staff to come and coach my entire department. It will cause, I don't know if that culture, if we are there yet, wherein, because always it is staff shortage, and like you rightly pointed out earlier, I am on duty, off duty, whatever it is. So even if the particular staff member themselves are interested, because you would identify a mentor, whether it is reverse mentoring or whatever it is, based on the skills, so you would expect that person is passionate. But I do not know if their HOD would be lenient enough to spare that person, unless and otherwise there is a system for that. Did I make sense? Was it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's very rightly said. I think in all these HR interventions, culture plays a very, very important, role. So what's the level of acceptance? What's the level of acceptance? I understand all of us get busy and people get, a very, very, I would say, siloed in terms of, my resources, my team, So unless there is an organizational culture and we formally put it as a practice, and that's why I said the involvement of the sponsorship of the leadership and the business leader is solely important to track the progress, kickstart it off, monitor the progress, get involved in doing the pulse checks. These are all the cultural shift. If we own it up at an organizational level, I think the results tangibly on ground are far more, likely to be seen. Otherwise, it's unlikely to happen, as I said. unless there's an involvement of top management. So are we done? We are up on time.
Yes, we are. Can we take one more question if anybody has another question?
One question, Amita. So
Yes.
I have a team of 22 people reporting to me. I'm the nursing head. So I've got different level of head nurses who again have people reporting to them. So to take this forward, if I look at applying this to my team, do I identify a senior member who can, undergo a reverse mentoring with one of the junior team members? Is that how I would apply it to my team? That's something I want to understand.
So Smita, I think the right approach would be to embrace it as a process. The moment you say you identify one specific individual, then individual is going to feel that why me? So he or she is likely to feel outcast. Is that I am not equipped in terms of knowledge, expertise. So if you do it as a process, so learning is a process. As I said in the beginning, there's nobody who could really say that I am fully equipped, I am competent, right? Learning is a continuous journey. All of us need it with time, with experience, exposure, role change. This is the continuous process of evolution. Sorry. So if you really want to do it in a department, I think you've got a sizable cohort, 22 odd people. Identify some of the seniors, identify the areas you would possibly like them to be trained. It could be A, B, C, and then identify some of the juniors so that you don't probably give a message to any specific individual that reverse mentoring is only for you. Then the acceptance at the first go is likely to get very diluted. But if you set it as a process, and probably you yourself come in and join this process as somebody who would also like to be trained on some aspects by somebody who is relatively younger to you, near to the organization, brings in specific competencies, then I think you could be a live example of somebody owning up this process. And I think the buy-in and success of this whole association is likely to be far more multifold, I would say.
All right, thank you. Because one thing with automations that we see is that we have a few people who are into informatics and who are very pro at all automation and digitization initiatives that come up. But whereas some senior members are not so well aligned. So I was thinking if that can be. Thank you so much.
Sure, welcome.
Great. I'm so happy that the seed for reverse mentoring has already been planted in your head, right? And I'm sure you will take. Can we bring that as a capstone project, guys? You guys are going to kill me if I do that now. But yeah, that's a good seed to get into your head, and maybe sometime down the line you might want to look at that.
Be brave to move into that space.
Yeah, exactly. Madhvi is giving her expert comment, and she says that be brave to move into that space very soon. You should be one of those trailblazers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I strongly feel it takes a deep sense of confidence in yourself. That's one, and awareness. And the fact that you're not judging anybody. You're simply enabling an individual on a specific skill, right? And it could be at any level. Sometimes if you talk to the youngsters, they come forth maybe not from the angle of a lived experience, but a very processed kind of, I would say, I wouldn't say experience, something that they've lived through, but a perspective, a processed perspective, because there's so much of information coming their way. They're reading so much. They have access to so much of awareness is tremendous. Maybe we did not have it when we were kind of growing up. In the different life experiences, it's a perspective that they gain, they form, they process it, and they have always an insight to share on a specific incident or a circumstance or a situation, and a very simplified way of approaching life. I think some of the layers that we create in ourselves, hey, hierarchy, and we should not be really talking to these individuals, but no. Please learn to exist in a brave space, not just a safe space. Be brave to come forth and learn to articulate it also in a manner that the other person doesn't feel offended, and you're not judging anyone. I think becoming very free flowing in the way you are, it really, really helps. So yes, reverse mentoring is here to stay. Start thinking from that particular angle, and be open to learn from your own youngsters. First of all, I think that's where the change starts. Yeah. Thanks. That's all. Thank you so much, Amita. We're taking a bit of time, but let's close it. Yeah.
While Madhvi was talking about this, I just recall an experience, a very short one. So I've got twin daughters. So my youngest one, the elder one is a very compliant child, very sweet, she obedient child. If you tell her something, she'll do. Don't do it, she won't do. The younger one is just the opposite, rebel. She would never do. She would do and then come and tell me. So one day I got upset with her. I said, "Why do you always do that? You always first do it and then come and tell me." So she tells me, and this is when she was 6 years old. She tells me, "Oh, mom, it's very easy to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission. I know if I ask you, you'll say no. So I'd rather do it and then come and tell you." And it was a statement that she made when she was 6 years old, and that it stayed with me. It sometimes happens in organizations also. If you want to do something and if you go and ask leaders, and I'm not saying that you should not ask. That's not what I'm trying to communicate. I'm just saying, sharing an example that sometimes it happens in our systems as well. There is protocol, there is a certain hierarchy that we have to follow, and when you go and ask for permission, it doesn't happen. Right? And rather, if you were to do it and then go and talk about it, and if it is successful, then it gets accepted, right? But yeah, there's a flip side to it. If it is not, then you still get your neck is on the line. Yeah, so these are small life experiences that really teach us a lot, and that for me, that moment was a great moment of reverse mentoring from my kid. Yeah. All right. So if there are no questions, I think we've gone overboard by 10 minutes. So my apologies for that. And I think we need to learn how to stay on time as Academy. Well, thank you so much, Durga. It was such an engaging, enriching session for all of us, for all our young leaders. And I'm sure they have a lot of lessons and takeaways from this interaction with you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Amita. It was a true pleasure connecting with you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Durga. Please take care. Everyone,
You're on
fill up-
mute.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
but they can hear me from.
Okay.
So everyone do fill up the form, etc. And Durga, we shall be troubling you once again. We have created this entire mentor net, right? It's a culture that we're trying to build. It's a first step in that direction. It's a pilot that we are doing. And with these wonderful people, I can assure you, I think I stated that, just taking another 30 seconds. We have the most energetic, enthusiastic, futuristic people in this layer. We need to really invest in them. They ask questions which make us think. Sometimes I think we become so comfortable in our space. So yeah, great. That's all. Thank you so much for your time, and you have a fantastic, fantastic day ahead. Yeah, take care.
Thank you. Wish you the
Thank you
same.
so much.
Thanks. Good luck, everyone.
Thank
If
you,
you have any
everyone.
questions,
Thank you.
please feel free to reach out.
I shall
Yes,
for
please.
sure.
Yes.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good day.